Yellow or silver pine, Pinus ponderosa. The silver or yellow pine, as it is commonly called, ranks second among the pines of the Sierra as a lumber tree, and almost rivals the sugar pine in stature and nobleness of port. Because of its superior powers of enduring variations of climate and soil, it has a more extensive range than any of the other conifers growing on the Sierra. On the western slope, it is met first at an elevation of 2,000 feet and extends nearly to the upper limits of the timberline. Thence, crossing the range by the lowest passes, it descends to the eastern base and pushes out for a considerable distance into the hot volcanic plains, growing bravely upon well-watered moraines, gravely lake basins, arctic ridges, and torrid lava beds, planting itself upon the lips of craters, flourishing vigorously even there, and tossing ripe cones among the ashes and cinders of nature's hearths. The average size of full-grown trees on the western slope, where it is associated with the sugar pine, is a little less than 200 feet in height and from 5 to 6 feet in diameter. Though specimens may easily be found that are considerably larger, I measured one growing at an elevation of 4,000 feet in the valley of the Merced, that is a few inches over 8 feet in diameter and about 220 feet high. Where there is a plenty of free sunshine and other conditions are favorable, it presents a striking contrast in form to the sugar pine, being a symmetrical spire formed of a straight round trunk clad with innumerable branches that are divided over and over again. About one half of the trunk is commonly branchless, but where it grows at all close, 3/4 or more become naked, the tree presenting then a more slender and elegant shaft than any other tree in the woods. The bark is mostly arranged in massive plates, some of them measuring 4 or 5 feet in length by 18 inches in width and a thickness of 3 or 4 inches, forming a quite marked and distinguishing feature. The needles are of a fine, warm, yellow-green color, 6 to 8 inches long, firm and elastic, and crowded in handsome, radiant tassels on the upturning ends of the branches. The cones are about 3 or 4 inches long and 2.5 wide, growing in sessile clusters among the leaves. The species attains its noblest form in the filled-up lake basins, especially in those of the older Yosemites, and so prominent a part does it form of the grove that it may near well be called the Yosemite pine. Ripe specimens favorably situated are almost always 200 feet or more in height, and the branches clothe the trunk nearly to the ground, as seen in the illustration. The Jeffrey variety attains its finest development in the northern portion of the range and its wide basins of the McCloud and Pitt rivers, where it forms magnificent forests scarcely invaded by any other trees. It differs from the ordinary form in size and being only about half as tall, and its redder and more closely furrowed bark, grayish-green foliage, less divided branches, and larger clones, but intermediate forms come in which make a clear separation impossible. Although some botanists regard it as a distinct species, it is this variety that climbs storm-swept ridges and wanders out among the volcanoes of the Great Basin. Whether exposed to extremes of heat or cold, it is dwarfed like every other tree and becomes all knots and angles. Wholly unlike the majestic forms we have been sketching, old specimens bearing cones about as big as pineapples may sometimes be found clinging to rifted rocks and elevation of 7 or 8 thousand feet, whose highest branches reach above one's shoulder. I have often feasted on the beauty of these noble trees when they were towering in all their winter grandeur, laden with snow, one massive of bloom in summer, two when the brown stamate clusters hang thick among the shimmering needles, and the big purple burrs are ripening in the mellow lights. But it is during cloudless wind storms that these colossal pines are most impressively beautiful, when they bow like willows, their leaves streaming forward all in one direction, and when the sun shines upon them at a required angle, entire groves glow as if every leaf was burnished silver. The fall of the tropic light on the royal crown of a palm is truly a glorious spectacle, the fervid sun flood breaking upon the glossy leaves and long wan rays, like mountain water among boulders. But to me there is something more impressive in the fall of light upon these silver pines. It seems beaten to the finest dust and is shed off in myriads of minute sparkles. They seem to come from the very heat of the trees, as if, like rain falling upon fertile soil, it has been absorbed to reappear in the flowers of light. This species also gives forth the finest music to the wind. After listening to it in all kinds of winds, night and day, season after season, I think I could approximate to my position on the mountains by this pine music alone. If you would catch the tones of separate needles climb a tree, they are well tempered and give forth no uncertain sound, each sounding with no interference excepting during heavy gales. Then you may detect the clicks of one needle upon another, readily distinguishable from their free wing-like hum. Some idea of their temper may be drawn from the fact that, notwithstanding they are so long, the vibrations that give rise to the peculiar shimmering of the light are made at the rate of about 250 per minute. When a sugar pine and one of these species equal in size are observed together, the latter is seen to be far more than simple in manners, more lively, graceful, and its beauty is of a kind more easily appreciated. But then it is, on the other hand, much less dignified and original in demeanor. The silver pine seems eager to shoot aloft, even when it is drowsing in autumn sun gold. You may still detect a skyward aspiration, but this sugar pine seems too unconsciously noble and too complete in every way to leave room for even a heavenward care. Douglas spruce, Pseudorestra douglasii. This tree is the king of the spruces, as the sugar pine is the king of the pines. It is by far the most majestic spruce I have ever beheld in any forest, and one of the largest and longest lived of the giants that flourish throughout the main pine belt, often attaining a height of nearly 200 feet and a diameter of 6 or 7 feet. Where the growth is not to come close to the strong spreading branches come from more than halfway down the trunk, and therefore are hung with innumerable slender swaying sprays that are handsomely feathered with the short leaves which radiate at right angles all around them. This vigorous spruce is ever beautiful, welcoming the mountain winds and snow, as well as the mellow summer lights, and maintaining its youthful freshness, undiminished from country to century through 1,000 storms. It makes its finest appearance in the months of June and July. The rich brown buds with which it sprays are all tipped swell and break about this time, revealing the young leaves, which at first are bright yellow, making the tree appear as if covered with gray blossoms, while the pendulous bracted cones with their shell-like scales are at a constant dormant. The young trees are mostly gathered into beautiful family groups, each sapling exquisitely symmetrical. The primary branches are whirled regularly around the axis, generally in fives, while each is draped with long feathery sprays that descend in curves as free and finely drawn as those of falling water. In Oregon and Washington, it grows in dense forests, growing tall and mast-like to a height of 300 feet, and is greatly prized as a lumber tree. But in the Sierra, it is scattered among other trees or forms small groves, seldom ascending higher than 5,500 feet, and never making what would be called a forest. It is not particular in its choice of soil, wet or dry, smooth or rocky. It makes out to live well on them all. Two of the largest specimens I have ever measured are in Yosemite Valley, one of which is more than 8 feet in diameter and is growing upon the terminal moraine of the residual glacier that occupied the South Fork Canyon. The other is nearly as large, growing upon angular blocks of granite that have been shaken from the precipitous front of the Liberty Cap near the Nevada Fall. No other tree seems so capable of adapting itself to earthquake taluses, and many of these rough boulder slopes are occupied by it exclusively, especially in Yosemite gorges moistened by the sprays of waterfalls.